Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world and the universe. We are filling in for Ralph Winterrowd. My name is Andrew Johnson, and I have with me Dr. Judy Wood. And you can look at my website, which is checktheevidence.com, and you can look at Dr. Judy Wood's website, which is drjudywood.com, or you can read her book, Where Did the Towers Go?, which is available from wheredidthetowersgo.com. Now, I did get cut off in the previous segment. I think there was some audio breakup which I wasn't aware of, but apologies for that, but it seemed to be out of our control. And we were talking, I think Dr. Wood had read out a segment which I didn't hear, but I did have some questions that I wanted to go through which had been sent to me by email when I posted that we were going to do this broadcast. And one question came from Ron, and it related to the caller that we had, what he was talking about, I think, because the question from Ron was, how does Dr. Wood see directed free energy technology being applied for peaceful purposes? You know, have you any particular thoughts on that at all?
Well, if it's not being used as a weapon, then it's being used for peaceful purposes. If it's not being used for evil purposes, but if people don't know about it, then they don't know when it's being used. From the way I see it, the easiest way to get it implemented is if it's no longer being written off as ray beams from outer space, space beams, laser beams from space, being ridiculed. If it's not ridiculed, then we can see about implementing it. But as long as it's being ridiculed, like if people out there who think the Earth's not flat, how dare you? As long as you keep with that mentality, the Earth's flat.
Yeah, and I think there is a psychological problem that needs to be solved here somehow, and I don't know how to do it. But before we can
look at the evidence. The evidence shows what happened, and once you understand the evidence of what happened, this is the demonstration of this technology.
That's right. So I think it's difficult to pick out examples for something which is, as Ron says, you don't like to speculate, and I know you don't like to speculate, but I mean, the way I would answer that question is that it would transform most aspects of our lives, because we wouldn't be necessarily having anything that runs on any type of fuel, for example, and I think there is a very, if you look at the evidence, I think in the book and elsewhere, you'll see that gravity is involved. So, and we get these levitation effects, which is essentially anti-gravity. So think about what effects on society anti-gravity technology would have. And I mean, I could do a whole other program on that, but we're not talking about that tonight. And another question from MJ, he'd said that you get criticised, Dr. Wood gets criticised for using the term toasted, as in the toasted cars, and he just wondered, can he...
Well, I use the term for toasted as in it's toast, it's right. History. Something happened to it.
Yeah.
You have to get another one. You can't fix it. It's beyond hope.
Yeah, I mean, he thought, did you mean total? But when you say totaled, as in cars, that's a different meaning, really, isn't it? 'Cause it normally means you've crashed it or you've wrecked it.
Yeah, because it has a unique meaning already. And I tended to use phrases that didn't already have a specific meaning that jumped to your mind,
right,
but more of a general term that wasn't a foreign term, like dustification. Well, even though that isn't a word, it's clear what it means.
Absolutely.
It'd be familiar, just like, it's toast.
Absolutely.
It's history. He's got to get another one. Or somebody's career is toast. It's just, it's done with.
Absolutely. And then, there was a question from Alan, and he was wondering. I mean, this again is more speculative, but we did talk about this before, and he's talking about what other countries really know what happened on 9/11. In other words, who knows what we know and are not talking about it? Which other countries know about this? Any thoughts on that?
Most of them.
Yeah, I would say.
Most of them.
Yeah. And
I think of various countries as being like the states within the United States. The governor of each state is, they understand what's going on with the government in another state, and they have their own club. And it isn't like they're going to go, take over, like Louisiana's going to take over Alabama and Mississippi. That's not what,
Doesn't
what
work
the
like
kind
that.
of things
Yeah.
they do.
Yeah.
But they can be in cahoots with each other about governing their citizens.
Absolutely, and I think there are certain mechanisms which seem to be used internationally, and we can show that the cover-up of your research is international, because I can name names, and I have named names, who appear to be working in this country with exactly the same agenda as Mr. Wigington and Mr. Gage, and of course Mr. Harriet is Danish, so this proves that there are people in these countries who are working to the same agenda.
In Australia.
Yeah, and in Australia too. And there was a good question from Atahan here, and I think it's kind of a sort of not an entirely serious question, but he's asking, do you think that Colonel John Alexander and Colonel Tom Bearden have read the Where Did the Towers Go book? So.
Oh, they probably don't need to.
They probably don't, do they? I mean, people perhaps don't know who these two people are. Colonel John Alexander was, or is, I should say, a figure that pops up on alternative knowledge programs such as Coast to Coast and so forth. And he actually worked on the remote viewing program in the 1980s, the so-called Psychic Spies program. And he also went to visit John Hutchison in 1983 and saw John Hutchison's experiments then. So he's known about John's experiments since that time, and Colonel Tom Bearden has written a lot about these so-called scalar weapons and scalar technology.
Oh, he has seen my website and made like one or two statements,
right?
Or maybe one line about it, saying, "Yep, very well could be."
Yeah,
and just kind of bit his tongue after that.
Very non-committal, wasn't he? And I think Jesse Ventura tried to get him involved in that program that you did with Jesse Ventura a couple of years ago, didn't he? And that didn't really come about, did it? So.
Yeah.
So, okay, so I think I've probably covered most of the questions that we'd been sent. Oh, there's one more actually, or maybe no, there's actually.
Well, what I'd like to make a statement just to emphasize this again. The cover of my book, the title, "Evidence of Directed Free Energy Technology on 9/11." Well, the buildings mostly turned to dust in midair. Therefore, the evidence in my book, including that evidence, shows what got done. So it's evidence of a technology that exists that can do what got done. That evidence shows a technology that can be used for other things other than evil purposes. It can be used for providing free energy. That's what that means. It's sort of like the silver lining in the dark cloud. Evidence of directed free energy technology on 9/11.
Right.
So it's evidence of what happened on 9/11, but it's also evidence of something good that can come out of it.
Absolutely. Well, we've got another break now, so we'll be back in 2 or 3 minutes, and we'll speak to you then. My name is Andrew Johnson. I have with me Dr. Judy Wood. We're talking primarily about 9/11 and the cover-up of that event and the cover-up of Dr. Judy Wood's research into that event. And you can visit our websites. Checktheevidence.com is my website, and drjudywood.com is Dr. Wood's website. Now, we were going through some questions that had been sent to me, and I've got a question and sort of some points being raised by Hillary, and she said, I'd like to ask if both Dr. Wood and yourself, with reference to WTC 1 and 2 destruction, will kindly bring in the discussion about why one of today's academic engineering departments, the one, well I do, I won't reveal what it is though, insist on dedicating nearly a quarter of an assignment to asking the student to explain energy conservation in order to focus on later calculating the impact energy by an object when you know the drop height of a specific mass onto a fragile commercial product to satisfy a test method for a BS-EN standard. That's BS is British Standard. It then goes on to ask for the calculation of the velocity. Of course, I don't want any hints about the answer, as I've already done this, but the nature of this question is very subtle. In the subconscious mind of the student, aware of 9/11 and maybe questioning it, knowing the official story focuses on collapse as the demise of the towers, a student may then try to calculate the energy at impact and attempt to hypothesize an example of a kinetic energy force hypothetically dropped directly above one of the towers to begin its destruction using the known values of the tower height and certain formulas rearranged. Hillary says she remembers in a previous show Dr. Wood was discussing the subject about how post 9/11 physics textbooks insist on showing how important it is to calculate the energy used for the student to understand that an impact or destruction actually occurred. And clearly this negates the desire to be able to empirically show something. So if the energy cannot be calculated, the towers never went away in 9 seconds, faster than the acceleration due to gravity at 9.81 meters per second squared. I never fail to be amazed at the effort to hide the existence of weaponized free energy technology used on 9/11. So I think to summarize that, Hillary is saying they tried to get you to focus on the calculation, not on the observation. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Dr. Wood.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So many people are hung up on calculations. Like, remember the Greg Jenkins thing? He wanted to know, if I calculate how much energy was required to destroy the buildings. Well, what does that tell you?
Absolutely.
What are you making these calculations for? Just look out the window and see if they're still there.
Right.
If they're gone, then there obviously was enough energy. Of whatever form.
Absolutely, and obviously calculations are necessary for certain things, but not for actually looking at the
observations.
Yeah. It's like trying to do calculations to, you stick your hand out of the window and it becomes wet because it's raining. Do you need any calculations to establish the energy of the water droplets, falling on your hand to know that it's wet? You don't. It's ridiculous. So I think that's a very good point and observation that Hillary has made there, with how the focus of study in science can be used as a way of shutting down some of your other intellectual faculties.